So I've called my short talk "The Blurred Space Between Theory and Practice." Working within a field that is inherently both scholarly and a form of practice presents an interesting starting point for reflecting on the synergies or lack of synergies between theoretical scholarship and applied research and practice. The field of communication for development and social change is interdisciplinary, as Raphael said, and provides a range of approaches for development practice across a number of development areas and agencies. My own work has demonstrated the ways in which theories are often disconnected from practice and how action research approaches can start to bring each within the remit of the other. Theories need reinterpreting and appropriating into practice, but practice also needs to be understood in relation to the underlying and tacit theories that inform it. Critical approaches are important, whether theoretical, critiquing applicability in real-world situations, adjusting theories based on learning, or practical, critiquing underlying theories of development often not made explicit in practice. Advanced research on communication for development, and especially communication for social change, is increasingly informed by complex and systems theories. Furthermore, new media and communication technologies change communicative and power relationships and networks in ways that complicate things even further. In contrast, major development agencies are driven by linear, results-based management requirements. The constraints imposed on practice reflect back on theory. So development scholars, those who are generally credited with the theorizing, often react to development agencies and their thinking with resistance, critique, and their own normative argument about what constitutes positive social change, sustainable or good development, and good communication. So the question is, how can we move beyond this? How do we bridge this divide? Academics as well as practitioners do need to contemplate this and experiment with meaningful collaborations in a reflective way. But actually, I want to say that there is a high degree of blurring between theory and practice, because although we can easily point to a divide, at the same time, in this field, theory does inform practice and practice does inform theory. Theory is not disconnected from practice, and practice is driven by theories. Not just some kind of separate academic theory, but also, and importantly, in the form of models or frameworks or approaches to development that define the context in which we all work. That informs our research questions and defines what is appropriate research and practice in the field of C4D. It's in this blurred space that we work, where our theories and approaches define and frame what we do, as well as collide or contrast or complement each other. It's in this space that we can experiment in ways that help us better reflect on those frames and on how to work together in more relevant ways to challenge and push forward theories, practices, and frames. So, for example, this is where I need my other slide. I guess you don't, yeah. There's only one slide. Sorry, just trying to switch to my second slide, which is the last one. Yep. Yep, thanks. So here you can see a framework for evaluating communication for development and social change. The growing dominance of project planning cycles and results-based management in development over the past 20 years has significant implications for the effective evaluation of communication for development and social change. These approaches to development and evaluation usually give priority to the linear, logical framework approach. This tends to emphasize upward accountability approaches to development and its evaluation, so that development is driven by exogenous rather than endogenous models of development and social change. Such approaches are underpinned by ideas of pre-planning and predetermination of what successful outcomes look like. In this way, outcomes of complex interventions tend to be reduced to simple cause-effect processes. This runs counter to communication for development approaches, which prioritize engagement, relationships, empowerment, and dialogue as important components for positive social change. Alternative participatory approach to development, complexity theories, and whole systems approaches understand social change as unpredictable and emergent, unknowable in advance, something to learn from and adapt to. The former instrumentalist approaches prioritize evaluation that's based on the categorization of abstract concepts, control of planned activities and inputs, and predetermined measures of success. The latter prioritize evaluation that captures relationships, openness, emergence, innovation, and flexibility. The former are mainstream, considered rigorous, and largely based on standardized methods. The latter are based on a range of approaches, methodologies, and methods selected according to each initiative and its context, and often considered to lack rigor. The latter are considered most appropriate, however, for evaluating communication for development. And herein lies a double bind. So on the one hand, there's a need to promote the importance of communication for development and social change and demonstrate this through evaluation. On the other hand, the most appropriate evaluation approaches are not well understood by mainstream evaluators, whose preferred approaches are in turn considered inappropriate by communication for development practitioners. So the rigor and effectiveness of non-standardized participatory approaches to evaluation needs to be established, and the very conceptions of what rigor in evaluation means challenged. This situation has been well rehearsed for a number of years by a number of people, and it's what led us to develop our framework. So this framework asserts the value, rigor, and appropriateness of alternative approaches to evaluation. And as you can see, it's got seven, I hope you can see, it's got seven key interrelated components. Those are participatory, holistic, complex, critical, emergent, realistic, and learning-based, and a series of related concepts. I don't have time to go into this, I'm sorry about that, but there is a chapter in the handbook, and the references are up there. So achieving change towards this kind of approach requires collaboration and cooperation between a wide range of stakeholders to reach mutual understanding and agreement on appropriate and effective ways of evaluating communication for development. This does require, in the blurred space in which we work, integrating complementary evaluation approaches with results-based and upward accountability approaches in order to develop a new paradigm that moves beyond the dichotomies and divisions that have hindered progress in this field. But this framework is meaningless unless it can be usefully applied in this space where theory and practice come together. It is a framework that's grown out of applied research and learning from practice, but how do we apply it and how useful is it? So a new project that we're just about to embark on will hopefully create a space for thinking about and experimenting with this approach. So the project is called Evaluating Communication for Development, Supporting Adaptive and Accountable Development. And it's a collaboration between researchers from RMIT University in Melbourne, myself and a colleague, the University of Hyderabad, Professor Pavarala, and UNICEF, so Raphael and his colleagues. So we're just gearing up to get started on it, but the bulk of the funding is from the Australian Research Council through their linkage research grant scheme. And this allows us time and the opportunity to experiment and to think about, in this space, in this blurred space that we work, to think about that space and what we might do within it. To think about how to make theory more relevant to practice and how to make the theories that underpin practice more visible, perhaps. The bulk of the fund, sorry, I've just said that. The main aim of the project is to develop and apply an approach to evaluating C4D that's useful and feasible both for learning and accountability purposes. And the central research question is, how do we marry an emergent adaptive approach to evaluating C4D with an increasingly dominant results-based management agenda? We're going to be working in the Asia Pacific and Africa, and we'll be taking a participatory action research approach to the project. The plan is that it will build evaluation capacity and regional knowledge hubs, establish learning and knowledge networks, and enable ongoing dialogue, reflection, and learning for everyone involved. So I would say that we do, as academics, researchers, and practitioners, work in the same blurred space. And there are opportunities, if we can make space for those in that space, to reflect upon and learn about how best to work together in this space, and at the same time to shape this space.